as a league member, I was going through the Vote 411 website to just see who had replied and who hadn't replied, to put their bios on the league website so that voters could learn about them. So I ended up looking at, I think it's the 13th district in Henrietta, the LD 13. So it was Mike Udelson versus, I think it's Matt Borkowski. And so, we ask a series of questions like, what are the most important issues the county faces this year? And, Mike Udelson had some long and serious answers about what issues the county's facing. And like all the way down the line, every question, no matter what it was, Matt Borkowski's answer was, well, as long as we fully fund the police, that's all we need to worry about. Like, well, what are we going to do about fighting global warming? Well, as long as we fully fund the police, that's all. It probably took him 1 minute to fill it out. He didn't have any thoughts except we got to fully fund the police. And, when I read that, I thought, oh man, what a loser. He'll never win. But he did. So there is a really deep appetite for that. And Singletary's going to ride it. And I think it's going to be a really serious contest in Monroe County. And
I agree.
It's time to dig in and get real about building that agenda that Howard was talking about and getting some unity around it, enunciating it clearly. I mean, Joe Morelle is not my favorite person in the world to bear the standards for that, but somebody's got to do it, and we got to do it fast.
Brad?
Well, go ahead, Howard. I'll go after you.
I wasn't going to say much. I just think Barb is on point. I think she's right on point. That race with Udelson, that one surprised me, Barb. But it was just the issue that we're talking about that he rode, right? This police issue and critical race theory and what's happening around COVID. Those are the issues that are fundamental to the backlash and the so-called realignment. It was interesting. What you said about Singletary, I agree. It was interesting. You saw Morelle's response was that Singletary's declaration in terms of his candidacy raised more questions than an answer. And he talked about how I didn't see the part that Morelle was talking about, but he said Singletary was asked certain questions, especially around gun control and so forth, that he didn't even answer. He said he had to think about it. I didn't see that part of the press conference, but absolutely he's going to try to ride that. He's changing his positions and so forth, right? And again, in my view, as critical as that is, it's still not going to the root of the problem. Again, you all, maybe you get tired of hearing me talk about this. The police department and the broader criminal justice system, just like the public education system, is a racist institution to its core. And we don't get at that. We don't get at that. It's sort of like we sort of just tinker around the edges and we deal with these anecdotal things and so forth, right? But we don't go to the root, to the heart of the fact that just as the public education system needs to be fundamentally changed, so does the criminal justice system, and not just the police department, the courts, probation, all of the different components. And that would be that agenda. That would be part of that agenda if we could develop it, which I'm just doubtful that we can. I don't see any indication that we can. So I think we're in for more of the same, and I don't think Morelle is going to do anything different than he's doing. If his feet are not held to the fire, I mean, really well-organized demand for accountability, then we'll see more of the same. And I'm fearful that's what we're going to see. I don't believe LaRon's going to beat Joe either. Unless some miracle happens, I don't see how he would beat Joe. Joe if people know who Joe Morelle is and how entrenched he is, it's going to take nearly a miracle for somebody like Singletary, who's green as grass in terms of politics. Singletary has no record. That's what Barb was kind of indicating. He has no record as a politician. He doesn't know politics. He's learning as he goes. You could tell that just by at the press conference. He seemed like a fish out of water. So it's going to be interesting, I guess.
Mario, you've been quiet.
Yeah, I have been quiet. I've just been listening, and actually, I don't even like going behind my brother Howard in many cases, because it's almost like, what else is there left to say after you kind of, put that information out there, especially as comprehensive as he gives it to us. So I almost hate going after him, but there was a couple of things earlier, real quick, if I could just mention. Brother Fred, I'm absolutely glad that you talked about the mental health issue in the schools as if it's some kind of like all of these children have all of a sudden they have mental health issues. And that's a critical point that you made, because we don't look at mental health in the traditional sense where somebody is actually diagnosed with a mental health problem and have a history of mental health, right? So we use these, the buzzwords is anxiety and depression, which are clinical terms, but those are the only two terms that you generally hear when people start talking about mental health. So I'm glad you brought that up, because there's this idea that children that have depression and anxiety, this is a long-term mental health problem, and these are the reasons that they're committing violence. So I'm glad you pointed that out. And Brother Howard also pointed out something that I think was critical too, which a number of people are discounting the social media aspect. So when he says that not having cell phones in the school district could actually be measured, that's a part of it, because as Brother Fred said earlier, especially as it relates to the violence and how we used to deal with it, social media has these children being able to connect instantly, right? So oftentimes when we were coming up, there was a buildup to some type of violence. But now many of these children have it right in front of their hands. So 6 o'clock in the morning, somebody posts something. By 6:30, you have all the kids at that one location and at that time. And having these cell phones in schools, they look for things to happen. They almost can't wait for something to happen so that they can be the next person going viral. So these are the things that, we really have to critically look at and think about as we move forward. But as far as LaRon was actually fired, right? He didn't leave office or anything like that. He was fired from his position as the police chief. By the way, that was public in front of the community. He was fired. So it is kind of interesting that he would be running for Congress. And I believe the last thing that I saw from him was that he was in the running for police chief out there in Texas, which I'm not sure if he ended up being a finalist or not, but I know he put his name in the hat for police chief out there. And as everyone already said, to have him as the person that they tap for the Republican Party to run for Congress against Morelle there's the suspicion around that, as everybody has said. But again, I am glad that there is somebody running against Morelle, because Joe Morelle hasn't done anything for the city of Rochester in terms of his what am I trying to say? His political savvy, or whatever his political agenda is, hasn't worked out well for Rochester. But as everybody has already said, I am actually glad that there is a challenger right now.
Fred?
I think Barb G said something that was really critical, is that what is the Republican Party giving him that he would even do what it is that he's doing? And it's like, what will, will that boost his claim or his lawsuit with the city, or will it be a detriment? And I'm still at that point where I'm trying to figure out what's his end game, because I just don't see your end game being that you want to do better for the community if you exited the way that you did when the issue happened, or because I still don't know who's really complicit in the Daniel Prude thing. So I'm really cautious and critical of why he's doing what he's doing. And I do think that, as Mario was saying, that I think the politicians, many of them don't see Rochester as the broader community of Rochester, being black and brown people, see them as worthy of doing something that would help them economically within this community. I see them doing things that will help those who don't need help in this community, but I don't see them helping the broader community of those who actually need the help and support. It's almost as if, actually, it's worse than how the county looks at Rochester. Those who are within Rochester who are supposed to be helping are not helping.
Barbara Brody?
I would like to know more, and I don't know if anybody has the answer to this. How is he or was he held accountable for Daniel Prude? He was the police chief at the time, right?
Yes. Howard might know. I know Howard is on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say to when Fred said he's still not clear about who's complicit. Facts that we know. We saw a series of emails. Remember, we saw a series of emails that clearly showed that LaRon did try to cover up some of the facts in the Prude case. We saw those. We actually saw the emails. But also, don't forget, we paid for a very expensive study of what happened in that case. The city council hired this law firm out of New York City, and they issued a report, and they clearly said that the mayor was complicit, that she lied. LaRon said she tried to get him to lie. So based on the facts that are out there, there's no doubt that they were both complicit in a cover-up. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt whatsoever. So he was going to resign, retire, but she fired him before he could, sort of in retaliation for saying publicly that she was aware of what was going on when she was trying to make the case that she was not aware. So that's why he's suing and so forth. But let's not have any doubt whatsoever that they both were complicit in trying to cover up what happened in the Daniel Prude case. And that report is still there. I think it's on the city's website. You can go and read it. They hired this really super expensive law firm out of New York City, well-known law firm. We paid a lot of money for that study. I can't remember how much, but it was a lot. And so,
But then there were no consequences?
no
trial,
consequences
nothing.
whatsoever. None whatsoever. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I guess LaRon would argue, well, it was consequences for me. I got fired. I guess that's what he would argue, and he would say it's unjust. That's why he's suing. But no consequences for the mayor. No consequences for the police officers. No consequences for anybody. And this was in the hands of the attorney general, the state attorney general, who's now running for governor. And in my view, and this is my view based on all of the information that's out there, she was complicit in the cover up too, as far as I'm concerned, based on the facts that are out there. So yeah, that's all I know. All I know is what I read in the newspaper.
They determined that there wasn't a murder, right? So if Daniel Prude, if the attorney general stated that Daniel Prude was not murdered, right? That's what she came back with, right? Then how is it a cover up? That's all. That's been my question. Could somebody answer that for me? So if it wasn't a crime, then how could it be a cover up? Fred.
Well, first, let me say this. If he didn't die on his own, then he was murdered. Because he wasn't trying to kill anybody. So it wasn't self-defense. So he didn't die just natural causes. So somebody murdered him. Just to what I was actually saying, Howard, was that it wasn't clear to me because no one has been charged, or there's been, as Barb said, there's been no consequences to anybody. And it's hard to see if we were killed, if one of us was killed by another, then it would be murder. It would be classified as murder. It wouldn't be hard for anybody to say that one of us killed the other and it was clearly murder. But I think that the words that they use is trying to change the narrative of the situation at hand. And one of the things I think that society uses to quiet the masses is time. And it's always be on their side. Even if we try to mobilize, we could get that momentum going, but we can't keep it very long because some of us got to go back to work. Some of us got to watch the kids, put them on the bus. There's so many dynamics that takes place that pulls people out of any mass that we try to do. And we haven't understood how to manage that because we don't work together, because they did it in the 60s. They did it in the 60s. They did it. But we can't seem to figure out how to do that today, which is kind of perplexing to me as well. But I don't, it's them changing the narrative. It was clearly murder. There's no other way that you could call it anything else but that. And the fact that they're not bringing anybody to bear is problematic as well, because now it opens the door to say that, anybody get killed. We don't have to bring anybody up to say that anything is going to happen to them. We can clearly see it as what it was, but nobody's going to be charged. And unless the community keep putting their feet to the fire, and that's we go back to the people in office. We are not holding them accountable for the things that they are doing. So they keep doing the same thing. And that goes back to what I was saying about the kids. If the consequence is not greater than the act, people are going to keep continuing to do it.
I want to answer Shanique's question directly to the best of my ability. How is it a cover-up? We have to follow the facts. Number one, how is it a cover-up as far as the mayor was concerned? The report that you paid for said it was a cover-up, said that she lied about not knowing about what happened, that she lied, and that was her role in the cover-up. The police chief, we saw the emails that he wrote. We saw them. And so that's how he was involved in the cover-up. Letitia James, who was responsible for the investigation, hired a national expert. Oh, by the way, the medical examiner said it was a homicide. A homicide is the killing of one human being by another. That's what a homicide is. There is such a thing as justifiable homicide, in self-defense. But they didn't even say that. Fred is right about the narrative. They didn't even call it justifiable. Instead, Letitia James went and got a national expert who disproved what the medical examiner said, that he actually didn't die by asphyxiation. He died because of, I forgot this technical term, Mario might know it, but it basically means what happens to you when you're high on drugs like PCP, which is what they
Excited
said he was.
delirium.
What's it called?
Excited delirium.
So that's what the expert proved, is that he actually did not die by homicide like the medical examiner said he did, but instead he died by this delirium, this excited delirium or whatever. And Letitia James knew. There were attorneys across the nation who said they didn't understand her investigation when she went and hired this man who has a reputation for getting police off the hook in these kinds of situations. So that's why I believe, and I can't prove it in her case, there's no real facts that I know of, right? But it's awful suspicious. But I was suspicious before then, because see, we forget about how things happen. Remember, we never found out about that until I think it was like September, August or September, we found out. It had happened in March. Letitia James had the investigation on her desk all that time. It hadn't said a word. That's like 6 or 7 months. 6, 7, 8 months that she had this investigation. So I suspect, and I can't prove this, but I suspect that Letitia James, LaRon Singletary, Mayor Warren, and maybe some of the city council members thought that this would blow over and they would never have to deal with it. I believe they were all complicit. I can't prove that, but that's what I believe. That's what my common sense and my gut tells me. And so that's all I got.
I have a question. Did the family actually file a civil suit?
They did. It's still pending.
Okay.